Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon. I'm just jumping on. I have been speaking to my youngest child, Abraham, who has got really into the idea of me doing sort of podcasts around true crime because he's really into it, or certainly doing some videos while I'm doing stuff. Now, obviously, unfortunately, I'm often too busy to do stuff like that, but if I can do stuff while I'm doing it, seemed like a good way of mixing and matching both. And Abraham has a lovely friend called Matilda who has asked that I cover the case of Noah Donohoe. Now, this is a very recent case, and I want to be very respectful about it. It's very close to home. It only happened in Belfast, and some of you may know about it. You might know more than I do about it. Now, just to be very clear and to caveat this, I'm not really great at retaining dates and times and stuff like that. So I'm just going to kind of tell the story. However, if you want a really deep dive on it, there's a YouTube channel called A Drop in the Ocean, and she has incredible, she's got a two-part incredible YouTube kind of video vlog, I suppose, of what's happened. You'll also see a lot from Fiona Donohoe as well, who is campaigning still in regards to Noah's disappearance. It's one of those really odd cases, and some of you may know it, so drop a note in the comments if you do know it. I'd be interested on your take on it, just because it's so bizarre. So Noah is 14 years old when he goes missing, essentially. Now, it ends in tragedy. I will caveat that. So if that's a trigger for you, please do switch off now. But yeah, so this wee boy, he's 14. He is a lovely kid by all accounts, very studious, really good at music. He goes to Malachy College in Belfast, which is, it's a grammar. You've got to do tests to get in there. This kid is very, very bright, very articulate, really, really lovely. He's involved in school very much. His friends say he's very sweet, very academic indeed, in the choir, all of the good stuff, the stuff that as parents we would be proud of. Now, Noah is set to go out and meet some friends for the Duke of Edinburgh Award. So they're just going to go out and do some bits and bats, and that's in Belfast. And it's at the Cave Hill Country Park, apparently, that he's supposed to be going. Now, he makes arrangements with them, and his friends kind of cancel those arrangements, but it's kind of vague. It's teenage cancelling as opposed to, us guys where we'd be going, oh, I'm not going to be doing this. It's kind of a, yeah, probably not, no, but it's not really definitive. And Noah decides to go anyway, and he goes on his bike. Now, his mum's not real keen on him going, but it's kind of arranged that Noah will text at about 6:30 to say he's okay. So he leaves about 5:30, and then he's supposed to be home by 8:30. Noah is reliable. This kid is 100% reliable. So if he says he's going to call, he's going to call, and off he goes. Now, the way that he's going, the direction that he's going is actually a similar direction to the direction he would go to school. So it's not too distant from where he would go. There is a time when he will need to veer off from that route. But in the whole, it's kind of where he would go to school. So no massive detour there. Now, I will go on to say as well that obviously in Ireland, there are political troubles, and it does relate to this story. It comes into this story, but I don't know enough about it. So I'm not going to get too involved into all of that. But just to say that is part and parcel of it. So off Noah goes. He goes off to school, off to meet his friends, in the direction of where his school is. But by the time it gets to 6:30, when his text is meant to be due, nothing comes. So his mum starts to worry because Noah's really reliable. Now, prior to all of this, he'd been a bit clingy, nothing massive, just a bit cuddly and a bit sort of maybe not quite as normal, shall we say. So basically, all of this is going on, and he is he's not withdrawn, he's not depressed. There's no signs of anything other than maybe being a bit more cuddly than usual. He lives in a really good area, and I will say that in that area, a hostel had opened, which had people who had drug addictions live in there. It had people who were perpetrators of domestic abuse and also victims of domestic abuse. And I'm not just saying that for the sake of it. It does come into the story later on. They had caused problems on the road. I think one of them had OD'd outside their house and stuff like that. And Fiona had campaigned along with other residents of the street to try and get this closed down. And again, it does come into it, and I'm going to get the facts and figures muddled, but there is a significant link to it. So these people knew Noah and had been known to sort of shout abuse and jeer at Noah and his mum, because obviously she was complaining locally to, the council to try and get this closed. Anyway, all that aside, Noah goes off on his bike to set off, and he is gone. He doesn't send his 6:30 text message, which he was meant to, and that is significantly worrying. By the time it gets to 8:30, when he's supposed to be due home, now his mum's worried, right? That he should be back. And Noah is not somebody who would not come home. So eventually they go and look out at this, I'm trying to remember the name of it, the Cave Hill Country Park. They go out to the Cave Hill Country Park to see if they can find Noah, and there's no sign. There is no sign of this kid. So she does what we would all do at this point. She rings the police. And so the police act very quickly. I think even by the time she's still on the phone, they have dispatched to get somebody out there. He's a 14-year-old boy, and they want to know where he is. And the police do a significant search around the area. There's no sign of Noah at all. And actually no sign that he's been there either. So the next day, they were searching for ages. By the next day, things seem really bleak. Noah hasn't come home. There's no sign of him. He doesn't have his phone with him. Well, he did have his phone with him, but he had no credit on his phone. So he couldn't ring his mum if he had been in danger because he didn't have credit on his phone. Now, his phone comes into it again significantly because there are CCTV footage details of Noah's journey and what happened. Noah didn't go out to where he said he was going to go. Instead, he ends up in Belfast city centre. Now, Noah was biracial, and obviously with the troubles in Northern Ireland, there's also some issues as to, kind of Protestant, Catholic, that kind of thing. He shouldn't have been in the town centre on his own. It wasn't necessarily the safest area for him to be in. So that caused some issues. But anyway, he's there. The CCTV footage shows him riding along with his backpack. As he's riding, the CCTV footage from all of these shops and all of these areas sort of cuts. So you've got, a few seconds from here and a few seconds from here and a few seconds from here. As he's riding, the next footage shows him he doesn't have his backpack. He's still riding, but he doesn't have his backpack with him anymore, which is quite odd. There is also footage of him falling off his bike, but he has a helmet on. And witnesses have said he wasn't hurt. He got straight back up and he got straight back on his bike. So it's one of those oddities, but he seemed okay. He wasn't particularly injured from that. There was no sort of damage to his head, and he certainly didn't hit his head, but he had got back on his bike and he had carried on cycling. The next part of CCTV footage shows, and witnesses saw, Noah is now naked on his cycle. He's got no clothes on. He's a 14-year-old kid, and he's cycling. He's looking over his shoulder. He's looking really worried, and he just carries on. And he ends up in a part of sort of Belfast that he had no place being at all. And we're getting quite late at night. Now, his disappearance sort of was noted. There's a time lapse of like 6:20 when they know that Noah did not have his backpack and did not have his phone. And that becomes significant because there is a photograph found on his phone of a man's hand. And that could only have been taken at the time when Noah was missing, and he didn't have his backpack or his phone, and his mum was desperately trying to contact him. So why somebody had picked it up and then put it down again? It was in a park over a 20-foot wall. there's all this really weird stuff, right? It's not sitting right. So anyway, there are later witnesses. He is now he goes to a cul-de-sac out of the way of where he should be. And while he's there, witnesses do say they saw him naked on this road. And there's different stories that are told at this point. And not everybody has come forward. Again, the troubles in Ireland, not everybody was a willing witness. But he was seen to be naked on this cul-de-sac. And while he was there, it is reported that a white van was there and that they looked like they were waiting for Noah. And nobody really knows what happened with that. But Noah at this point sort of disappears. Now, witnesses from that area, from that cul-de-sac, say they did hear screaming on the nighttime and, some noises. The screaming, they said, sounded like it came from a woman or from a child. So we can assume it was Noah, but also there are people who live around there who said somebody tried their door. Now, no police. They just didn't take fingerprints. They didn't really do anything with that information. And so there's a few bits where the police maybe missed out on some stuff. A witness found Noah's bike. They took that in and they reported it to the police, who came and took it, but they left it outside because it was raining, and they left it outside. So they couldn't get any evidence from the bike at all after the fact, which is frustrating. And not many of sorry, that was the last one. Not many of Noah's clothes could be found. So a few bits were found. His phone was found, but not all of his clothes have since been found. Some of them were put on a wall. They were put into an unsealed bag. So again, couldn't be tested for any forensic evidence. Now, Noah, the search starts in absolute, earnest sort of spates for Noah, and they do find him. Now, there had been some work carried out near this cul-de-sac where he was seen naked. There'd been some work carried out in a storm drain, and that storm drain had not been locked. The police went in to do a search, and they traveled down quite a way and they didn't find anything. It was a few days later that again the storm drain was searched, and nearly a kilometer into that, I think it was like 960 meters, Noah's body was found. Why it hadn't been found before, nobody really knows. How he'd got into a storm drain is absolutely beyond anyone's belief. You'd have to really know where this storm drain was to even find it. And he had to travel a way to get there naked. He'd have had to have gone over a little stream. And then this storm drain's not some, like accommodating tunnel. It's this tiny space that he'd have to go through. It's full of debris. It's full of chains and all these kind of things. And he would have been injured, really badly injured, just going through that storm drain. And he's completely naked, remember, very vulnerable at this point and completely naked. So the police find his body and he is taken to the to go and have his autopsy. And when they do the autopsy, the coroner finds that he actually died from drowning, right? Now, there's a problem with this. He was in the storm drain, so the idea being that obviously he would have drowned it with the water there. However, the coroner asked that some water from the storm drain be taken so that they could do a comparison of the water that was in his lungs to the water that was in the storm drain. Never did happen. And it was supposed to. So nobody knows whether the water in Noah's lungs was from the storm drain or elsewhere. It couldn't be tested because they didn't get the comparison to it. That's problematic because when Noah's mum went to view the body, she said that his body was perfect. He had a 16-centimeter gash on his head. Now, that would have been in the place where his helmet would have protected him had he been wearing it at the time. They don't know how that came about. Nobody knows. But the rest of his body was perfect, other than a bit of water damage on his palms and on his the soles of his feet. If he'd have been crawling through that storm drain, there'd have been significant damage, but there was none. And so this then became problematic. What happened to the kid? He's very young. He's very vulnerable. And what's more, this kid was terrified of the dark. So if you're terrified of the dark, you're not going down some dark storm drain. You're just not going there, right? So Noah is, he's a mystery. Nobody really knows what happened. Now, to go back to the idea that, there had been, shall we say, some problems with the local hostel that was on the same road. One of the guys who lived in the hostel, and a woman who came forward, and she said that her and this other guy who lived in the hostel had tried to pawn Noah's laptop. And Noah had that laptop with him. So where had that come from? And she wrote a statement which was later redacted, and she kind of denied afterwards, but she had written it with a solicitor. So it is kind of deemed to have been, a fully witnessed statement. Now, if that's the case, and they had this this laptop and they were pawning it, right, there's a significant issue here. Now, this Maria says that in the statement that was then redacted, that 4 men had basically beaten Noah up and taken his laptop from him and had then tried to pawn it. And there's later significant accounts that these guys were involved in his downfall, shall we say, and that they had taken him somewhere and he had been drowned in a bath and then dumped in the storm drain. There have been people who have come forward to kind of verify that situation. One of the guys had gone missing. You really need to go and look at that documentary that's on YouTube with A Drop in the Ocean, because honestly, this story is the most bizarre thing. This poor kid who has got so much potential to change the world and be an impact in the world, just snuffed out. Now, there's some weird details that come from this as well, in that 2.5 years, because a lot of this information has not been released to his parents and his mum, should I say. And so there was an injunction, meaning that the police could keep every detail that they wanted to of all of these documents kept private. It was held over by the judge, so his parents can't get all the information. His mum is stuck. She cannot get, it's all secret. And so she's stuck without the info that she needs. That's always going to remain locked. And a lot of it is really important information. There's details that need to be known. And it looks like some of them are known. There's CCTV footage that wasn't released, not even to his mum. And there's significant problems with that in terms of just the way the law works, how cases are investigated. And because there's so much public query about what happened to this kid, they've locked it away. Like, it may never be released. And that's just a terrible situation. Imagine being a parent. Just what happened? What she did find out 2.5 years later, and I think it was from a Reddit post, and then it was verified, was that the night before Noah had gone missing, he'd actually snuck out at 3:30 in the morning. Gone half an hour, had his headphones, he went out and he had on a pair of flip-flops. There's a weird inconsistency as to whether he had the flip-flops when he came home, but he most certainly did not have his headphones when he came home. Now, there are rumors, it is just rumors, that maybe Noah had been sort of coerced into sort of muling drugs around the city, and that he was being intimidated. He was certainly somebody who would kind of acquiesce to any requests from males. He was very much sort of not dominated by the idea of males, but his mum has said, like, if some guy had said to him to do something, he would be more likely to do it at that point. So the story remains really, really mysterious. This poor soul who had so much potential to impact the world. If you get chance to just go and have a look at this One Drop in the Ocean channel and kind of get your opinion on it, and then let me know what you think, because it's baffling to me, this kid. The fact that he had no clothes with him, the fact that he'd stripped himself naked, that in and of itself A 14-year-old kid's not just going to do that. Something happened. There were no drugs found in his system either when the autopsy was performed. So it's not like he was, under the influence of anything. He could have had a mental break. That's true. But he wasn't really in any way, shape, or form that way. He was a very sensible young man, very lovely, very intelligent. It's a real loss to the world, and nobody has a clue what happened to him. It's just a mystery. And it's one of those really strange cases where, partly because of the political turmoil in Belfast, partly because the police are keeping things under lock and key so nobody can find things out. There's so much that prevent a solid answer. I will say that the police have said that there was no third party involvement, and that it was essentially self-afflicted one way or another. That doesn't ring true. He would not have gone in a storm drain. Terrified of the dark. Why would he go into a storm drain? So yeah, it's just one of those really weird, bizarre stories. And, there's so much more to it. You really do. You want to go and see that documentary, because it is really fascinating to see just, how much stuff has gone into covering it and keeping it sort of hidden and locked. And as a parent, that's nightmare fodder, isn't it? Who does that? Who keeps that sort of stuff under lock and key? Will we ever find out more? Hopefully his parents are campaigning. There are, some amazing foundations that have been set up in his honor. But it is a convoluted, terrifying tale of, your child, my child, anybody's child. He was just going out to meet some friends to do some stuff for the Duke of Edinburgh Award. Now, blatantly, he wasn't doing that. He was doing something else. But nobody knows what. Nobody knows why. And we may never find out what happened to this poor kid. So I'll leave it at that. I just wanted to kind of tell the story and hopefully get some people to go and maybe have a look further into this, because it is such a relevant case. It's so soon, it's so close to where we are now. And I think for any parent, really, really close to heart. So I just wanted to kind of share it, come on with you guys, share it with you while I was making a card for a friend of mine. And yeah, let me know what you think. Hard case, really difficult case. And, love and respect to his mum and to his family. And, all of that stuff, just horrible, horrible stuff. I hope you're all okay and you're all taking care of yourselves. I will come back. If any of you have any cases that you've heard of disappearances or stuff that's really odd, let me know and I'll go and have a little nosy, and we'll do some longer formats coming soon. But for now, it's just jumping on when I get the chance. And I will speak to you all really soon. Take care of you. And I've got to work out how to end this because I'm hopeless with technology. Take care. Bye.